Pacciola. I am Tavis Ashton-Bell. I am the HOD for the Department of Ethno-Music at Christ University. And it's wonderful to see that there's so many other education institutions here as well. So it's a very good place. I'd love to congratulate Paolo on hosting a very wonderful event for Brillante. And the performers that just went on stage and just performed for us, absolutely amazing to see. It's a wonderful blend of different approaches to learning and music and exposure. So here, I just want to quickly introduce our two panelists that I'll be somewhat moderating. And here we have first of all Dr. Bindu Subramaniam, who's an entrepreneur, singer-songwriter, and educator. She's the co-founder and CEO of Subramaniam Academy of Performing Arts that works with over 40,000 students a year, and the lead vocalist of Subramaniam and playlist of our program. She has traveled the world performing solo with her family, her bands, and with orchestras. For audience up to 500,000. That's a lot for Australians, I'm just saying, that's okay. She has 8 degrees, co-authored 2,000 academic books, delivered multiple TEDx talks, and writes for numerous publications. She's been named among GQ's 25 most influential young Indians and BW's 40 under 30. Let's welcome her to the event. And Dr. Paolo Pacciola is an associate professor at the Department of Performing Arts at Christ University, Bengaluru. He's an ethnomusicologist, got his PhD at Durham University in the UK, and he's a musician with diploma with pianoforte, conservatorio Ethno-Musicologist. He's a Tagore Fellow, affiliated with Indira Gandhi National Centre for the Arts in New Delhi and Kerala from 2019 to 2021. ICCR Senior Fellow, affiliated with the International Centre for Kerala Studies in Trivandrum 2017-18. He taught ethnomusicology at Conservatorio di Music Pedrola de Vicenza in 2011 to 18, and Middle East and Indian drums at Conservatorio of Music Tito Sirpa Olice in 2003 to 2006. His research interests include a number of interrelated areas within ethnomusicology, organology, iconography of music, history, archaeology of music and musical instruments, and religious studies. He is particularly interested in the ritual functions of music, musical instruments and dance, and in the relationship of music and images, intended as painted or enacted representations in India. His main ethnographic focus is on music in India, where he's carried out extensive field research on the language and ritual functions of drums and drumming. He is the author of the monographs The Indian Drum of the King God and the Taj of Nagwara, series in music from SOAS in the University of London by Routledge. Il Pensare Musicale Indiano in 2005. La gioia e il peccato, Musica e danza in India, by Bessa in 2008, co-authored with Lisa Sapa. He's directed the video research Essence of Odissi Dance, the Making of a Tradition, Supra RP Performative in 2016, based on a project of Lisa Sapa. So please welcome Dr. Paolo. Alright, I'd like to kick things off by passing the microphone over to Bindu. I'd like to introduce yourself a bit to the audience, and what are your main areas of interest, and what inspires your approaches to music learning?
Thank you. I think giving you the Italian and the Indian names pronounced is a bit of a test, and I think Kira did a really good job of putting this panel together to make sure that we have 3 very distinct accents, at least. So when we're talking about ethnomusicology, we're sure that we're getting different perspectives. defines my approach to music education is sort of the fact that I'm culturally curious. And I think that it's very important for us as musicians and music educators to no longer look at a single style of music or look at a single style of teaching all music. So what we try to do at Sapa, what I've tried to do throughout my career is really look at different styles of music as connected to each other and strip away what tends to be the over-exoticization of culture. Because when you tend to look at a style that's different from yours, you tend to say, okay, this is not us, this is other, this is exotic, this is what they wear, this is how they sound, and the moment you do that, you sort of create a distance between yourself and what you know and the other side of music. So if we were to kind of strip away all the differences and start with a point of similarity, which I refer to as cultural curiosity, right? If you're talking to kids and you say, you know, this is a lullaby in Italian, or this is a lullaby in Australia, or Swahili, and this is a song that a mother would sing to her child just as your mother would sing to you, then you're appreciating a different language, a different musical style without necessarily considering it exotic. And I think that's something that we need to keep at the center of music education and ethnomusicology in general. So we're able to preserve the authenticity and the power of the music without necessarily looking at everything as other.
Thanks very much. I really concur with how you're talking about. There's no real one way to approach music. And before I go into things, Paolo, what inspires you when approaching music and in learning or teaching anything of this kind?
Okay, my first interest in music has been always a relationship with, let's say, religion, but it's not the proper role. So this is my channel, and the way I look at music is through religions, let's say, but it's not the proper role. And so this I enter to the way I think it. And in this way, I've approached many cultures and different musical forms. And the concept which I always have in mind, which is also let's say, the concept of ethnomusicologist now is what is music. So this is what I think, and always I fight with this word, because what is music actually? So what we speak of music, we speak of something which is connected to. It might be, according to John Cage, yes. And why not? And indeed, that's what I'm going to say. The point which I'm reaching, what is music? Then, in my view, I prefer to speak of sound, maybe. Although the word music is more appropriate for general understanding, so it's medium. But actually, it's quite critical. So when I think of music, I always manage in this way. But certainly, I think if we take, in a general sense, music is a door for communication. And this is what I love of music, and this is what the way I think of it, and when in terms of teaching, I think teaching or translating is there depends. Because even teaching is, again, a complex work and is not appropriate sometimes. I think it's a way to communicate. It's a very good way to communicate, along with other arts. Dance and the other visual arts.
Thank you very much. So we understand that for every culture there is language and there is music. So how would you, I'll go back to Dr. Bindu, in terms of Sapa teaches multiple approaches to music. So how do you get somebody who is learning about something, a culture or music that isn't native to it? How do you approach this?
That's an interesting one. So there are two parts to it, right? One is how do you teach a style of music that isn't native to you culturally, and two, how do you represent multiple styles of music to the same student, right? Because many of our students now are learning more than one thing, and that's okay, and that's wonderful. And then how do you look at the relationship between those? So if you're learning Western classical piano and Carnatic violin, how do you reconcile those students, or even multiple styles on the same instrument? So I think when you're, again, coming back to the idea of taking out the things that are not relevant to the music and look at the basic rubric of it, what is the technique, what is the style, and then what is the context of the music, right? Is it religious music? Is it music that is provided in a social context? And the reason that this is important is because when you're looking at an authentic expression of a style of music, there's so much more than just the notes, right? So you start off with the notes and you start off with the technique and you make sure that you have a hold on that. But then also how do you place it back in a context that is relevant to it without making it so other and so exotic that it's unrelatable. And the second piece of that is when you're teaching multiple styles, even multiple languages to the same set of students, how do you create a base understanding or a home style that's relevant to them, and then they can relate other things to it, right? And one piece around that is languages, and of course there's a lot of research on why learning to sing in different languages is important. And there is research on why listening to different styles of music and opens up your mind and makes you more open to different cultures, different styles in general. And the conversation about how do these things make sense together is something that as educators we continue to work on, right? Like can you teach an African lullaby and an Australian lullaby, a Maori lullaby, a New Zealand and Italian lullaby, and then create a cultural context where they all make sense together so that a student is gaining more global understanding of themselves through music.
Yeah, so I want to piggyback on this in terms of especially seeing what the similarities from our differences emerging. So the second question, well, how would you showcase different viewpoints of music to classes in general?
This is what I actually do. My approach is on cosmologies. What is, first of all, in my view, we have to understand how different humanities, I would say, or different people over time and in this time think of sound and the way they approach it. So, if we see in this way, we see that music or sound is considered in different ways according to the way they see the world, how the world has originated. Is emanation, Srishti, like India, or it is happening somewhere, in another way, or it's a Big Bang. So it depends on the cosmology, on the world, the way you see the world. And then music is, or sound, is connected with this view. So the way, because I think I have experience in many instruments. I started with piano, and then I moved to different drums, including the Pacciola, and then other instruments. If you don't understand what is the instrument, even the concept of instrument, what is an instrument? Is a musical instrument a shaman or something else? For them it's not just an instrument. But for a pianist, a Western pianist, piano is a piano. This is my instrument, it has to be played in this way. What is an object? It needs me to learn, to acquire it. For a shaman, the drum is something different. And even for India, the Pacciola itself, it's not a simple drum. It is also visual. And when you apply the arta, you are aligning it. So it's not a simple instrument, musical instrument. There are many of such examples. So when when I share my talk with the students, I always start from this aspect. I think we have to understand different views, because there is a dominating view in this world now, which is mostly Western, but it's been accepted by any community in general. I mean, it's what is called globalization, so it works, but it's important to see, that's why I was starting also from music and closing from music, because music is a Western world. And when we use this word, we are already opening, we are moving into a frame which is defined by the word music itself, which is Western and Western relative to a particular moment, historical moment, and it is appropriated for one particular moment of time of Western music. So we are projecting many ideas when we look at their performance, although the influences is there probably. We are looking at them from the classes of Western music, because we are looking at music, but we have to see what is for them the sound. What are they doing?
Can I just answer to that? I mean, to kind of agree with your point, I've seen that a lot. When you look at the piano is an instrument, as you said, and many of us who have learned to play the piano, with the exception of my dear friend Sachin, who actually knows how to tune the piano, we're at the mercy of somebody else to even make sure that our instrument is in playable shape, right? Because that's our relationship with the instrument, and it's so complex. But if you look at the shamanic traditions, they started learning how to make the instrument. So if it's a kora or a djembe or something like that, when you're introduced into musical tradition, which is deeply connected with spirituality, spiritual practice, dance, everything is rolled into one. A big part of it is knowing how to make your instrument. And that's such a different way of looking at it, right?
Just adding with the instrument, I could play clarinet, and even though I can't make one, I have a repeater. But also, it has a name, for instance. Like, it's not just a tool. It's an extension of me whenever I'm playing. And I think that that's felt in the same in any piano is being played. It's not just you and an instrument that is separate. You are feeling the instrument as an extension of yourself. So where do you end and it begin? It's a bit hard to put a line in the sand there. And so just to bring it around, because you went with the westernized concept of the word music, because in that sense, there is a word with a predefined social understanding. Say, for instance, music is an entertainment or something like this. And in that sense, the word in itself is influencing what we see it to be. In that, this is open to anyone who wants to jump in. Do you see any particular, first of all, differing viewpoints? And as a bonus thing, how do we combat this colonial viewpoint of music?
I think that it's an issue here in India, and not only in India, even India would be similar now, right now, at least, because our traditions have been completely wiped away. So we should limit itself. But here with the issue with Western music, it's accepted, but again, moreover, for what is exactly the meaning of music. Means the period of so-called the classical period, back to the law mostly. But if we look at Western music, the path which has been done by many musicians, it goes much, much beyond it. So at first I think it should be taken, because we were saying that's music according to John Cage, yes. Because the system, the tonal system, has been completely destroyed, we can say, from inside. So I think this kind of approach should be here also in the teaching. Because otherwise you are taking on only one portion of Western music. While if we look at John Cage was also a philosopher, even Debussy in my life. And he was in between. I mean, he opened the way to John Cage. But he was creating a new world, opposite to the German world of the previous music, because they were German music. There is also an aspect. It's still there. And it is there in pop music, so because it's it is I mean, the technical system is still there. But in concept, no. It has been done a lot. So this is what I would say.
Thank you. I think when you look at different cultures and how they look at music and also how they look at each other, right? Like this idea of Western music or Western classical music being this Occidental music and everything else is world music, or everything else is. So this, again, comes back to this idea of color, right? But we're now more and more coming to a point where we see that, or we're able to acknowledge that every culture has classical, folk, popular, contemporary expressions, and they all exist simultaneously. You're talking about Western classical traditions. Indian classical traditions, I believe, follow this 5,000-year unbroken tradition, which may have started at Vedic chants and then gone to Tritone and then some of the Gregorian chants. But then you say, when you talk about very classical music or the pinnacle of classical music, you sort of decide that was the 1800s, and then you pretend that it hasn't really evolved since then, right? Whereas it has, right? So you look at when do we decide that you've reached the top of where you need to reach? Because what was happening in the 1800s was classical music. Yes, what's happening now is still an expression of classical music. It may or may not be similar to that. It's not pop music, because pop music is something different. So the evolution of traditional styles is something that we need to acknowledge, and how that forms a place when you're trying to map what music is, and when you're trying to make all these neat boxes, there is obviously an overlap. So yes, terminology is an issue, but I think that we're in a good place now with streaming platforms and things where you're able to kind of very easily see that all these different styles do exist concurrently, and they may influence each other, and then we don't need to label it as much, and then sort of these academic definitions become a little less relevant to the average listener or even to the average musician, and I think that's a good thing.
So if you might take a bit of my answer in this, because I agree with you on both things. One of the major problems in setting up a Western music department in India is that teaching Western music the Western way is not relevant. So, for instance, it's not the point to teach how to be a Westerner. It's not the point of it. So, there's been a lot of work in the university to strip away the irrelevant parts of what is to be taught and present students with a toolbox that can be used in whichever way they wish, to be able to see themselves as, hey wait, I am beyond just this Western style. That's why Paolo is doing a course called Music Dialogues, which exposes to different cultures. And I wanted to bring this up because having a department of Western music sounds threatening. But the original intent is to actually be against what Western would be. Because this colonization of music with the other, to be able to say, oh, only Western music is musicology, for instance, that's a big insult. In terms of all music, all study of all music is musicology. So there doesn't need to be a distinction. So even with the name of this talk, with Ethno-Music, I have a slight problem. Because it's all music. wasn't done. Right? So in this, I'll turn it around now in this sense, because I feel it's not really the same thing in this sense. You're not.
They are people with multiple skill sets and they can choose to make any of those skill sets or combination of those skill sets their day job. The idea of whether you're a creator or a rocket scientist or a computer science engineer or a combination of those things. So when you're looking at jobs, yes, it is easier to make a living in music. There are more avenues for us to do it, but many of us who do it are doing multiple things at once. Because they're just looking at honest and authentic expression, which can come from trying on different styles. And we don't live in boxes. We don't have the challenges that a couple of generations ago our grandparents had, where you had to very much stick within one style of music and you had exposure to only one style of music. Otherwise, there would be problematic repercussions. I don't have the problems that my grandmother and great-grandmother had with, if you're a woman, you shouldn't perform in public, because that's a different choice altogether. So I think it is a good time, right? And I think that the academia has built this platform for those of us who are nerding out to dig into it and say, okay, fine, what is this? How do we define it? What are we doing? But to get our music out to the masses, it's really about bringing something that is joyful, bringing something that people can engage with, bringing something that will have people thinking. And I think we're moving in that direction, all of us.
One of the other things that is in terms of exposing people to different music, how does it expand the student as a digital person?
It is connected with what I was saying before about cosmologists. I think that is very important to be open to. First of all, listening, which is the first thing any musician should do. And so, you learn, you see many things which are not seen because of music, new sounds. So, I think it's very important. The reason why I insist on cosmology is that I think that although music touches us directly, there is no need of words, of adding words. But at the same time, the world where we live now, even rationality has to be there somehow. And it is helpful also to be rooted somehow. And if you understand, then you can be more stable. Particularly students, they are, or any who's gone through music, any more conscious, aware of what does mean for other humanities. They say, this sound, what the other people have done this sound, it's very important. In my view, and we are needed just to study this because your civilization is filled with different ways of understanding music. So I think it's important, because you are supposed to many things.
Paolo and I often share hours long discussions because we're sort of on opposite ends academically in the same home. As in, I'm a phenomenologist, so I look at how things appear in the experience of people. And so therefore, when I'm looking at learning music, okay, look at cosmology. I have a view of is the vehicle by which we translate our perceptions. So, in essence, yes, I believe that there is a connection in this because depending on how deeply I view myself, I will see what we're all our own universe. So, in that, especially when it comes to, I sort of shift into the arts and do you think that music should be kept in a particular part of it? Because this connects to, we've got multiple skills. There's so many things you can learn through music beyond music. What do you want to take as the transfer goals? What do you encourage students to take outside the classroom? And how do they apply it to their life outside of those years?
I need to make sure that I keep this one short because this is something that I'm quite passionate about. And at a very superficial level, you hear people say things, oh, I write a song to help people memorize the seasons or the spelling or the periodicity or whatever that is. And then the music is a tool for road learning. And that's one way of it. But I think it's really about seeing how what music teaches you and what it makes you feel translates into other spheres of your existence. Right? And it could be like if you're trying to get students to fundamentally understand something which is abstract, you could take a string quartet and help children understand concepts of rhythms, right? Like resonance and how does the length of the string correspond to the sound that you hear and then more physics concepts that I understand. Then I understand. Or you could look at, say, music and mathematics and how when we work with polyrhythms, how do polyrhythms help you understand things like losing it, and things like that. But then you want to get into the softer side of it, which is what excites me. And how is music a force for social change? When did people decide that it was better to sing songs than perform? How as civilization over time have we used music as a soft power? How do we continue now in our geopolitical context? Our countries are becoming very good friends now, right? And that's geopolitical context. But how does music as a soft power or cultural power come along? And when we talk about soft power, it is music and dance and all these cultural things. It's food, it's standard. And then you look at how music does have a very large role to play outside of music classroom and outside of conversations among musicians. So I think it's important to acknowledge the particular influence that music has outside the concert halls and outside the classrooms and how it can be a positive support. And if you need to learn very other people, that can happen too.
Okay, so I'm looking at my watch, and there is time for general Q&A from the audience. Should you wish to ask us anything, now is your time. So, is there a microphone? Otherwise, you can just have one. I'll come. Yeah.
If you take the crowds and you put it out of its context, it may be more powerful than it is now in Cuba, because how many people are trying to listen to the concept? But the language is very powerful. So if you move it in another context, then it will be much powerful than its origin. So in this way, moving interconnecting different traditions and putting them in dialogue.
Very respectively, but also see what there is that emerges out of difference. We see some commonality, but there's still respect for the tradition. There's still the sense of identity of everyone that is there. There's no right way to live. So why is there a right way to music? There isn't. So if we're looking at combining the treasures that are found from each approach, how are we not going to overcome any threat? It's a bit like a secret, but this is where I come from. This is why I'm trying to fight throughout the academic kind of that we've been able to get this set up in a way that allows for local interests also to I just wanted to answer the question.
Any other questions from the audience?
And their own workers that they show some sort of, validity. So I think exams in India are safe. We might be using them for the wrong things, but a lot of people tend to value the exam more than the encourager, which hopefully will change. The first question, which is a little more nuanced, and I'll answer it based on what I understood, and I'll give it over to you. I think when we're looking at musical styles, like this rubric that we need people to understand, right? And that could be scale practice and proper hand position, or it could be singing along notes, it could be understanding fundamental of music as well. But as educators, it's our responsibility to ensure that the methodology changes to meet the students where they are. And we tend to have a lot of problems when we look at methodology being as pure as the art itself. And they're two very different things, right? The art needs to be authentic always, but the methodology needs to adapt. So if you're teaching a 3-year-old today or teaching them in a very different way, then you will learn, or your parents will learn, and that's okay. It's no longer this sit still and listen, and I will tell you, and you will repeat, and I'll tell you that you've done it wrong, and then you'll repeat again. And at some point that was the right way to learn, but it's no longer the right way to learn, and kids have access to so many amazing things out there. And yes, their attention spans have reduced, but also their ability to make connections has increased like never before, right? I remember this. My daughter, when she was very small, was listening to Lady Gaga on the radio, and she was like, that is Alibaba, right? So these are the connections that they're making, because these are the things that they're exposed to. So as an educator myself, where I draw the line is, as long as you are making sure your fundamentals are solid, as long as you're putting in the hard work, as long as you know how your fingers are supposed to sit in the instrument, as long as you're not limited by your technical skill, then it's my responsibility to make sure I'm giving you things which challenge you in the right way. And that may be in the form of a 5-word prompt. Like, give this to ChatGPT and see what it says as lyrics, and then see how you figure out something out. We don't pretend that technology doesn't exist. It does. And it's good. And there are a lot of things we can learn from it. And there are a lot of things that we can continue to challenge it with. Or it could be, give me a reel. Just write one section for me. Give me a real format presentation. And that's what we do. That's how we do it. Principally music, and this is how you want to create music, that's okay. If you want to go into Logic and you want to create a virtual band behind you, but you're still creating something on the phone, that's great too. The problem is when you think that all your favorite bands started in garages or basements, and just by sitting in a garage or basement, you are virtual. So I think that's what we need to grow. We embrace the technology, we look at the tools, we use it to challenge ourselves, and we ensure that at some point our kids are getting their fundamentals. Because once they have the fundamentals and they have access to this technology and everything else, then they're creating something much more powerful than their exists.
Yes, I agree, in the sense that it is important to grow up in a tradition, to be rooted in a tradition. Then, to create dialogues, you should learn a bit of the others. Starting from your own, but then you have to look at others. First of all, listening. And then trying to understand, yes, each tradition has structures. And we have to be open to if we understand what structures are there, we can try to understand how to put them in connection. If possibilities are there, we can creatively think something. But of course, it's the first thing to be rooted somewhere. And then even I believe that certain freedom has to be there. In time, also. So But certainly it's important to be strong in one tradition, to have good roots. Otherwise you will do and go anywhere in my view. I mean, you cannot produce anything deep if you want to do it. That's if you are doing it. Otherwise you can do whatever you want. But as an educator, and as a person who thinks that music is power, not just entertainment, it's a very rich, it's a force, it's a power. I put example to students, to those who come to me. And one thing which I don't like in general is assessment in terms of assessment. It's the expectation of, which are not only in India, but even in Europe, of marks. This will be, you listen to this always. Mark. How are you going to assess? What marks are you going to put? How are you giving marks? I'm speaking of something else, not of marks. And if you want to deal with music, you should not think of marks. That's why the way I approach the subject is in a free way, in a deep way at the same time. Don't think of marks. If you are going to you want to become a musician, you have to love what you are doing, you have to lose somehow yourself with what you are doing, and then find yourself regenerated in there. And if you think to marks, and if you think to the way how I'm going to my role of football and playing you first, and second, you are not going out of your cage, you go back and you want to produce good music. Music is also freedom. It leads to freedom, in my view. It should, at least. It depends on what you are going to do.
I want to bridge on that one, because on the other side of the same coin, marks what cause anxiety. If you have a performer who's worried about what market they're get, right, that's can be crippling to their self-identity as a musician, as opposed to transcending what marks mean. And just being saying, look, that's just a mark of progress. That if I don't care about marks, I know what I love, I know what I feel. It's not going to be as much, well, there's going to be a reduced level of anxiety being, this is what's representative of my family. If I make one mistake, my whole family suffers. For something like this. And just as a compliment to these, the two approaches here, fantastic. And also, just to add another tool to this, to teach by a shot, in terms of, I'm more a mirror. I'm not telling you who I am. I'm not getting you to copy and clone me. I'm a mirror to you. So, for instance, okay, we're teaching oral. Okay, we have these water qualities. But what is it within your emotion that you feel? It's not just one dimension. There's the quality, the flavor, the color, whatever you want to associate, but there's also the tendency, the magnetism that is there. How do they differentiate? So by getting out of the head and into the heart is also showing a different perspective on how to do your work. And through musical structures, there are different ways or similar dimensions of, okay, they all run through time. They all have some component you could possibly call rhythm or pitch. So there's different aspects of these, and it starts to show what are these dimensions that are intermingled and form one. And so in that sense, the different ways of activities, I'm just going to join it back to what we were saying, in terms of applying in other spheres. And for instance, the reels that you were saying, it's a fantastic way to compose. Okay, compose music for a reel. Or give us a question. Okay, what music could you compose that would actually make someone not press that skip button on a YouTube? If you can solve that, you're going to make so much money as a writer, right? So there's many different external to music fields that you can start applying, and that's that transfer of knowledge as well. I'd like to move further, so I can piggyback off it. So, I'm getting a little bit of a way here in terms of after this workshop, but thank you very much for your questions. Unless there's one more who just really wants to. Mr. Tavis is difficult and limited, and our vast population has the potential. How do you see online teaching as a noble service to the teaching of not just music but many other subjects? Do you think that that could address for a country like ours the access to music education? Thank you so much.
Easy answer is yes, with online teaching you can reach more people, etc., etc. But I believe that a lot of music education is what happens in the human connection, and we can produce that online. We still haven't figured out how to entirely capture it. Many of us teach music online because we have to, because our students are in their environments where we have access to them. But I think the real shift or the real change needs to happen where we're enabling music educators online. So we're creating the next line or the next generation of local music educators by supporting them online, and then they enter and working in person. Because if we look at rural communities, if we look at small towns, villages, the music is very different in these places, and it should be very different. And we want to standardize that. We need to give everyone space for their own authentic expression, their own traditional expression, and that's a very powerful thing. But what they often don't have are the methodologies for teaching. They don't have the infrastructure for teaching. They don't have the idea on how to create sustainable livelihoods for teaching. So if we, as organizations, are able to leverage technology to bring up the next generation of music educators, that might be the right way, or at least in my opinion, the right way to reach people that are not able to reach now.
Yes. So in my view, I have nothing against online learning and teaching, but it cannot be just online. It needs in-person teaching. It should be based in person. Then it will be supported, because it's a good solution. It's difficult. As an Italian who wanted to come to India to study the music, it was quite difficult at the time to get money and then time and everything to come. So it's good, it's a good opportunity. But I think we should not, it is not good to think that everybody has to study this music, what music, commercial music or general music or what music. I think there was, I forgot to say, in my mind, I mean, it's, each village in India, each area, they have their own tradition, people have their own tradition. And I think that should be somehow kept. There is no need to invite every single areas with mainstream music. I'm speaking of mainstream, but of course not, even if it is classical, let's see Europe. So I'm not speaking of India in case. I don't want to, I love India, so yes. Even if you think to Europe, we cannot teach any transferred happening, unfortunately, it's why the traditions have almost been one of the way because of the teaching and the organizing of festivals based on, I mean, supposedly run for folk music, but then musicians play the basis of tonal music, which was declared in their tradition. So in this way, you destroy also. So I think online teaching, it's a good opportunity, it's a resource. Even though it cannot be done exclusively online. Then we should be careful in thinking that everybody has to learn music and which music has to learn. Even probably someone who's in a remote area and is doing his own music does not need to learn classical music or pop music or whatever it is?
So I feel that, okay, first of all, I agree totally. The whole picture can be only online. Yes, there are a lot that online can support, and there are particular techniques that don't require the one-to-one emotional connect like we are right here in this room. But whenever there is that work in terms of performance, that is very, very difficult to teach online. In terms of how to connect with your audience, how do you emote, how do you make the audience feel a particular way by showing through your performance, through your music. And it's the same sense as if you're here in this room feeling this conversation as opposed to watching it on YouTube. In that sense, are you connecting in the same way when you're watching a video from the comfort of the sofa? Or when you're at the place feeling all the difference in the atmosphere? So anything to do in that sphere is very difficult at this moment, but okay, maybe there might be more technologies that can emerge. In terms of, especially with what Paolo was saying, in terms of selecting what it is that you want to teach is very, very important. Because coming from the other angle of the same place, why not the rural communities be showcasing what they're doing? Why not there be a dialogue from every place, teaching the centralized, right? In those sense of approaches, it's not a matter of me teaching you. I'm just a more experienced learner. The floor is equal in this sense. And I feel that if you're going online, what might be a great way is to customize the partner. If there's a point where the student understands, what am I aiming for? Am I aiming to be the composer, singer-songwriter, artist, studio producer, or a whole bunch of this? Do I want to perform? Do I want to help others in their performance? Then that can also showcase what kind of lessons I'm taught. So there's also capacity for customization personally through online. But again, it's a matter of maybe blended with if there's some things like human-to-human aspects or understanding different cultures, that if you blend it with different experiences or exposures, then there's the holistic aspect. Because otherwise it's very easy for a computer to reduce people down to digits or numbers. And I think that the whole aspect of music is connected. So that's okay, let's introduce you to the question. Thank you for being here. Thank you for Paolo. And thank you to our wonderful audience. I really appreciate it. Thank you for accepting us on this panel discussion on approaches to